Well, it's a real honour to be here. My goodness, what a process getting here. My goodness, doesn't it look amazing? Did you get that wow factor when you came in this morning? I thought, this doesn't look like what it used to. In fact, when I see photos of what it used to look like, I thought, goodness, it's so different. How did we go? But it's so great to be here this morning, and it's just, I'm just amazed at what a difference it makes just to blow out that back wall just a few metres. You know, as the place is expanded, there's going to be an expansion that comes in us corporate individually and also corporately as a church. It's been a time of expanding for our leadership as we've embraced a new vision of what God's doing, and we've expanded in courage and in faith and in stretching out, and here we see in front of us the results of it. And so I believe that God would say to each one of us that there is going to come not only a corporate expansion, and this is just one of many, by the way, but there's going to come individual expansion in our lives. And it's going to be a time of trepidation for many of us. It's going to be a feeling of, oh, this is unfamiliar. I haven't done this before, and I'm not sure I'm very, very comfortable. But as we lean out in God, He'll grab us. He's not going to let us drop. And as we stretch out, we're going to see the effects that it comes in our lives. And it's not just for our benefit. Please hear me. When God expands us, it's not just for our benefit. It's for the ones we affect and the ones that follow us. And you may find God is kind of pushing you and nudging you more and more than you're comfortable with. It's because you influence others. And there's people that follow in your trail that need to have you at a greater capacity. Otherwise, they can't be in a place to receive what God has for them. So it's not just about you. It's about the community we impact and the rest of us and the rest that follow. So I loved what Tabitha brought this morning. I thought Psalm 32 in the message was just fabulous. And she talked about the freedom that we have in just knowing that we have a clean slate. Isn't that unbelievable? If we really believe that, how would it affect your behaviour? You know, if we really, really believe that. And just to take that kind of freedom and pass it on to other people, it's actually quite so attractive and so winsome. And people want it. People want that kind of freedom. You know, last weekend there was 4 of us. We weren't in church at all. We were actually walking the Caples Greenstone track. There was myself and 3 others. And, you know, we were looking forward to this. I love getting out in the mountains. There is something when I get out in the mountains and you've got surrounded by bush, you're looking up and seeing these amazing, majestic peaks, and there's lakes, it just feeds my soul. It really does. So I've come back, I've got a few aches and pains, but I have a fat soul. You know, and when we were on the track, we were talking about a verse that's in Proverbs 24. And let me read it to you. It says, one day I walked by the field of an old lazy bones and I passed the vineyard of a lout. This is interesting. This is a Message paraphrase of you. And it was overgrown with weeds, thick with thistles, and all the fences had fallen down. I took a long look and I pondered what I saw. Listen to this. The fields there preached to me a sermon. And I saw, and I listened. Fields preaching a sermon. That's not bad. I like that. A nap here, a nap there, a day off here, a day off there. Sit down, take it easy. Do you know what comes next? Very soon you look forward to a dirt poor life with poverty as a permanent house guest. Isn't that good? I love that. I just think that's good. And so I was telling the girls about this as we were walking, and I said, well, if the fields preach a sermon, I bet the track will preach a sermon too. So we had our eyes peeled. So I'm just going to tell perhaps a couple of things that we learnt on the way, because after all, what goes on tour stays on tour. Of course, you signed these confidentiality agreements, didn't we, Deborah? And so, you know, but however, I will say, you would think that with 3 nurses and one other who wasn't a nurse, you would wonder who had had the best first aid kit. Now, automatically you would think the 3 nurses. Well, we all compared first aid kits. They're a little bit like mine. You've got your obligatory triangular bandage. I've always carded that, never seen it used, but I'm sure that one day it might happen. Use your survival blanket, a crepe bandage, an assortment of plasters. And then Leah McNaughton, where are you, Leah? Is she here? She's not here. She has got the most comprehensive first aid kit ever. You could do surgery with her first aid kit. It even includes little probes, splinter probes to get out splinters, when you're walking and get bits of wood in your fingers. She had amazing stuff in her first. We actually took a photo of it. I thought it was just so amazing, and ours was just like a plastic bag full of nothing. However, we had drugs. And when you go tramping, you always want to have a few drugs on board. However, it's interesting what different people put in their packs. One of our number, what's essential for me is not essential for others, but one of our number had dry hair shampoo. Isn't that amazing? I'd never think to take dried hair shampoo. But there you are. You just never know what's important. I'm not going to tell you who that was. One of the lessons that the track taught us as we were walking along is that the markers, first one is markers show you the right way. And as you're traveling along, you've got to look for an orange triangular marker on the track. It's essential that you follow it, because if you don't, very soon you're lost. And it's very easy to get lost. And you may think you're following a fairly well-worn path, and you may think you're on the right path. But very soon you can't find another orange marker. It is smart to keep your eye on the marker. Otherwise, after a while, you won't find anything and you're completely lost. Believe me, we did not want to get lost up there. And often we would stop and go, where's the next marker? If you couldn't find it, you'd go retrace your steps and look around. And we needed each one of us to find it because it was so easy to get lost. The Bible is the way. It's not the way. It points to the way. A lot of people think the Bible is their marker in life. They think this is the way to live. But I want to just say, the Bible points to the way. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. This is not Jesus. This points to Jesus. But Jesus is the way. And Jesus is a personality. And he's funny. And he's lovely, and he's gracious, and he's kind, and he's so much fun to be with. He doesn't get grouchy in the morning. He doesn't break his promises. He doesn't turn off if you do something wrong. Jesus is the way. It's not this. This points to the way. Whoops. And so Jesus is the way. He's such good fun. I've seen people use this as a rule book. And they go, the Bible says, and they shoot someone down with what they should or they shouldn't have done. That is not the way. This is the rule, but Jesus is not like that. Jesus is he's so good. And we can read what's in this book, and we think, and we can add our motivation to it, our intent. And because as you read the words on paper, you don't often get the tone. We can always get the tone completely wrong. One member of my family, when you ring him up, he goes, hello, down the phone. Honestly, it sounds like a declaration of war. It really does. What have I done? You feel like I'm going to get my head bit off. And yet another friend of mine, who's a medical receptionist, she sings into the phone. She's practiced. She goes, hello. And she's kind of convey an attitude of friendliness, and I'm really here to listen, and I want to help you. And there's the response when you listen to the declaration of war as opposed to someone singing at you is quite different from within. If you've ever had a fight with your partner, and they say, how are you? And there's a, I'm fine. And the icicles are dripping off the words. Do you ever have times like that? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Or you can have someone say, I'm fine. Honestly, I'm fine. There's a different response, and because you hear the tone. When you read the word, we can pick up the wrong tone inadvertently because we just don't really know the author that well. And it's really important that we get to know the author so we can get the tone right. Paul makes it very, very plain that it's not about rules. Galatians 2:21 says, "Is it not clear to you that to go back on that old rule-keeping, peer-pressing religion would be an abandonment of everything personal and free in my life with God? I refuse to do that, to repudiate God's grace. If a living relationship with God could come by rule-keeping, then Christ died unnecessarily." It's not about keeping rules. It's about relationship with Jesus. You know, often I hear God being misrepresented as a rule keeper, and it grieves me because he's not like that. He's kind and compassionate, he's gentle and he's full of compassion. People that do that don't really know what God is like. They really don't understand. They think God's up there with a great big stick ready to get them when he's out of line. They've got the wrong tone. They've got the wrong tone. What's God really like? He said, Ephesians 5 verse 2 says, mostly what God does is love you. Consider that. He mostly just wants to love you. Keep company with him and learn a life of love. It catches, it rubs off on you. Observe how Christ loved us. His love was not cautious, but extravagant. He didn't love in order to get something from you, but he gave everything of himself to us. Love like that. We can't love like that. It has to be God in us that helps us love like that. There's no punishment from God. Absolutely no punishment. Jesus took all our punishment. There are consequences from our choices, but that's our choices. But Jesus has taken all our punishment. Consequences will punish us, but not God. It's so amazing. You know, sometimes I can get off track when I slide back into thinking that God gets disappointed with me. And it's not a conscious choice. I just kind of disconnect from him. I find that I don't consciously chat away to him or ask him his opinion. And I suddenly become aware, actually, it's been a while since I actually had a bit of a conversation with God. It's not a deliberate thing. It has just happened. And sometimes that'll happen when my head will say one thing and my heart will say another. Like, for instance, God will protect me. And my heart will go, what? You got to be joking. My old man didn't do that. Why would God do that? And so there's kind of a division, but I'm not aware of that often in my conscious thinking. You know, when you're walking somewhere, you've got to be very careful, particularly through the track where we were, because there was lots of steps that were through the roots of trees. And you had to choose an area which was big enough to take the size of your foot. And sometimes they went off in different angles, and so it's pretty important that you have your knee facing in the same direction as your foot. Otherwise, you might find that you do damage to an ankle or a knee joint. And that's the last thing you want to do when you're out in the back blocks. And so it's important to kind of get your heart and your head in alignment, because then you can move forward with a real security and a safety in your footsteps. Sometimes we're not aware of that division within us. But if we ask for wisdom, God will give it to us. James 1 verse 5 says, if you don't know what you're doing, how many of you would say, yes, I can feel like that in certain areas of my life this morning? If you don't know what you're doing, what am I going to do with that husband of mine? What am I going to do with my children? If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help you. And he won't condescend to you. That's a good feeling. You'll get his help. Ask boldly, believingly, without a second thought. People who worry their prayers are like wind-whipped waves. Don't think you're going to get anything from the Master if you stay that way, keeping adrift at sea, keeping all your options open. My encouragement to you is trust God. His promises will not fail. And if you put all your trust in him, you will find that he will come through in the way that he will give you help. Because he's promised to. He absolutely promised to. That's just his way. The second thing, one thing that I want to say we learnt while we're on the track is that often you can't see where you're going. Now, this track was described by Doc as easy. Fairly short tramping hours, which was, like 4 to 7 hours, which is pretty good for a day's tramp. I thought, little easy icons. I thought, well, that sounds good because we're not terribly fit, and that sounds like just right up this. However, having done the track many times during the track, we wanted to rename the wretched thing. We wanted to rename it, we should have been there by now kind of track. And I guess for us, the stated timings that the dock workers had put down did not match our experience. Now, there was 4 of us, so we kind of broke into 2 groups. Okay, there was a fitter group and the less fitter group. I'm in the slower group. And so here we were. There was 1 watch between the 4 of us. The fitter one took it. The stated track time for one segment was the slowest would be 7 hours. The fast girls took 7.5 hours. We felt much better when we heard that. And so here we were. There was no sense of progress because they didn't have any mileage on it, any of the symbols at all. So you're walking around in the bush, and you come out by the river, and you think, how far we got to go? We thought we'd be there by now because, I'm sure we've been tramping for like 5 hours. It had probably only been 2, but it just seemed that long. And so we struggled after a while. I thought, there's not that sense of progress. If you can see where you're going, you feel a lot better. And if you have a sense of progress, it affects your motivation. And many times, we just couldn't see it just because of the nature of the track. Now, we had a plan. We wanted to get we wanted to get the hut and rest and eat. That was our plan. Now, when God looks at our lives, he has a plan too. It's slightly different from ours. His plan is that he wants to form Christ in us, the Christ nature in us. Then we can receive everything he has for us. Everything. That sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? Yeah, it is a good plan. But it's all about Christ. It's not actually about us at all. It's all about him. And so he's very, very intentional in our lives. And he puts us in situations that causes his plan to come in effect. His map looks slightly different from our map. We just want to go from point A to point B and just have a wee rest and enjoy life. Oh no. With God's plan, there's a few mountains there, there's a few valleys, there's some streams to ford, and there's the odd bridge and the odd log to clamber over. It's quite an exciting thing. Just like the elusive huts that we were looking for all the time, we think we should have arrived by now. But God goes, oh no, there's a little bit of work more that still needs to be done. If you can't see what God is doing in your life, you can get, like me, quite disheartened. What is this? We are on the right track. Look at all the orange markers. We should have been there by now. And after a while, you can get really disheartened. Proverbs 29:18 goes, where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keeps the law, happy is he. Happy. Happy is an emotion. It's not just we've just been let off. We're actually happy. How can we be happy when there's no sense of making progress? Let me just give you an understanding of what God may be doing in your life. There are ebbs and flows in our walk with the Lord. Ebbs and flows and seasons in life. Sometimes we can sense his presence. It is so tangible. It's exciting. Things happen. You pray. Suddenly people get healed. Finance comes flooding in. There's amazing things that happen. And it's so easy. And it's really exciting. But sometimes it's not like that. And if we're kind of looking, to see God acting like that all the time with us, we can feel like A, he's changed his mind, and B, we've got a raw deal. Let me just explain it to you. Sometimes God does hide. But even though you can't sense his presence in the same way, he is very much with you. And he's training you to walk, not out of your emotions, but in the discipline of faith. Here's another way of looking at it. We have times of blessing or times of building. One or the other. You're either in one season or another. For the last 4 weeks, we've had a time of building in this house. You haven't been able to see what's been happening because there's these huge signs on the door. Warning, construction zone, do not enter. And so you may have tried to peer in through one window or another, but you've really got no idea what's been happening in here. And you can get some idea through looking through the windows up the top, but it's only just an idea. There's been a lot of intense activity going on in here, especially with Peter coming in and putting a bit of pressure on the builders. But you're not aware of that because you're just looking from the outside. And in the same way, in our lives, there can be a lot of intense activity happening within, but we actually are not aware of what God is doing. We don't have his plan. Like the trek, this building has taken longer than we expected. We thought we'd only be out 2 weeks, but no, it was 4 weeks. So even though we couldn't see what progress was happening, it was happening. You know, behind these panels there's something like so many Ks of wiring and that sort of thing. And what's been done is putting in all the wiring to future-proof the building for upcoming technology that's yet to be developed for it that we can use. And so God, in the same way, is processing in us or building in us for future-proofing for what is coming up ahead for us. We don't know what's upcoming ahead, but he does. And he wants to get you ready for it. He wants to have you stable and secure in his promises. And there will be times when you don't feel his presence. There will be times when you don't sense an answer. And there's a pure faith walk. I know he's with me even though I don't feel it. But I choose to believe it regardless because he is trustworthy. His promises he does not break. And I can trust that. It's not, and you know, that's just how he does it. Practicing faith is a discipline. It's not always wonderful, but when you've got it, the enemy can't touch you because you are secure in the knowledge that God is with you. He doesn't change his mind. He's not sick of you this day because you didn't act the way you thought you should have. He doesn't change. And so we need the ebbs and flows of the Spirit of God. We need to be able to dig in and develop that faith discipline. Otherwise, we fall over and we try and live from our soul, and that won't help us for the future. And so he's doing a building work in you. Some of you are in an ebb this morning. You're not really aware of the Spirit of God around you. And I want to encourage you, these are the times when he gives you revelation. These are the times when he'll give you understanding. These are the times where he'll give you words that will shape your life. You don't get that in the really exciting, effervescent, frothy times with God where you're so excited because you're too busy being excited about God, you can't take it in. But it's when there's ebb of the Spirit, that's when you get the revelation and the insight. That's when God does the building in you to future-proof you for what's ahead. And it's not just about you, but it's for all the others that you affect. Do you get that? As these are precious times. We might want to help people. And that's usually our heart. We want to help people. And God goes, yes, I like that because I put that in you. But then he sees more in our lives. He said, actually, I don't want you just to help people and tell them what they're doing wrong. I want you to love people. And so he'll take you on a journey where you learn to love people. And that includes loving your enemies. Because quite frankly, there's things you get about learning. There are things that you need to learn about loving people that you only get from loving your enemies that you don't get from your friends. That's part of the building process. God has a plan. He's watching over you carefully, and he'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. You can come to the altar and get an impartation, and that's great. But then, mark my words, you go from impartation to building. And you'll go, I thought it was going to be different. No, that's magic thinking. That's all that is magic thinking. Wave the magic wand and suddenly everything's different. No, we go right into building. But all that God's put within you, he wants to develop it and process it to a place where you not only help yourself, but help others. I wonder if I could ask some users to come. I'm just looking at my time. There was a cop. He was a vicious cop. He had the instructions of going and checking some of the farms. They're looking for cannabis crop. And this man was very officious in performing his duty, and he went to one farmer and he said, well, he's waving a search warrant. He said, I've got the authority to search out every area of your farm if I want to. I'm looking for illegal drugs. And the farmer goes, oh, okay, is that right, is it? And his manner irritated the cop, and he got more bumptious, and he said, yes, it is right. And I can just go wherever I like. And the farmer wasn't terribly impressed, which irritated him anymore. And so he looked over one of the fields, one of the paddocks just nearby, and he thought, actually, that looks like a good place to start. And so, the farmer said to him, actually, I wouldn't go there if I were you. And the cop, oh, who are you? I'll go there if I want to. So he just polished his badge, but swung his leg over the fence and started marching across this paddock. The farmer watched him. Within a couple of minutes, he heard shouts and screams. He turned around and he saw this cop running for his life, chased by a very angry-looking bull. And he just leaned over the fence and shouted over to him, show him your badge! Show him your badge! Show him your badge! You know, that cop had the authority, but he didn't have the power. And some of you guys this morning in the congregation, God is developing in you power. And you're in a season of ebb. And you don't sense the presence of God in a way that you have in the past. It will come again. It will come again. But I want to encourage you, cooperate with God's building in your life. Ask him, what are you doing in my life right now? What trait are you trying to develop in me? What is it that I need to learn? What are you trying to teach me? How can I cooperate with you so I can get through this track quickly? We can shortcut it if we cooperate with God. Without a vision, you will meander purposelessly through life. And I just want to encourage you. Ask him, what are you building in my life right now? What are you building in my life right now? You know, Matthew 11, it says, are you tired? Are you burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me. And you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. I like that. I don't like being tired. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on your life. You won't have unnecessary baggage in your pack. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Have I connected with God in the last 24 hours? Have I had a meaningful conversation with him in the last week? Have I got my eyes on the God markers in my life? Am I watching what I'm doing? Am I conscious of God's presence in my life? Or have I got off track like how I described? You know, not consciously making a choice, but kind of just drifting and becoming less aware. Am I aware of what is developing in my life in this season? Because it's not just about you, it's about others that you have fed. Am I carrying unnecessary baggage, which I don't really need to do that? And I just want to encourage you as we just take a minute to just reflect. I wonder if you mind standing, please. And if you become aware that you haven't connected or you wandered off the track,